Throughout American history, our country has grown economically but often without ethical behavior. One example is the events surrounding John D. Rockefeller's economical but unethical decisions to expand the American pipeline. In our current economy, it seems that ethics has become more of a responsibility for businesses and business people and is studied more regularly in the classroom. We have asked Xavier professors from different fields of study to explore our big question: which is more important, ethics or economic growth?
Historians would say that ethics is always this very flexible set of rules that the players decide upon. And as the seats at the table change, as the games change, as who gets to play, who doesn't get to play change, that's when the rules change. That there isn't really, I think most historians would say, an ethics that people either follow or don't follow. There's a shifting terrain of agreed upon standards.
Well, ethics comes from a Greek word, ethos, that just means habit, really. So the study of ethics is the study of those habits and mores and customs that lead to the conduct of a fulfilling life, a flourishing life. Economic growth is necessary for a reflective life. It doesn't mean pursuing terrific amounts of wealth is necessary. That could even be detrimental to the life of the mind. But a certain modicum of economic growth is necessary. Otherwise, you're working all the time and don't have the leisure to reflect and ask the kinds of questions philosophy is concerned with, questions concerning the good, for example.
I think of it as a group of people who are bringing their individual ethics into the situation. Is economic growth possible with unethical behavior? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. Good guys don't always win. And in history, we have seen unethical behavior that did lead to economic growth.
Economic growth, from the perspective of political scientists, is a complicated one in the sense that, on the one hand, it's viewed as a net positive for society. All things being equal, it's better to have more resources and more time than it is to have less. The last 150 years, we've seen tremendous growth in terms of the economies of the world. All of these things have, on balance, been very good. People have greater access to food and clothing and job opportunities in some respects. On the other hand, there's trade-offs, right? And so questions about inequality, questions about power.
People relate ethics with the distribution of values that we create in our economy. And oftentimes we see unequal distribution of wealth. And people view this as unethical nature of our economy. Economic growth does not necessarily create this sort of unequal distribution. I believe that economic growth, and therefore creating more value for everybody in our society, is eventually going to help everybody to improve their quality of life.
A reconsideration of the founding concepts of modern political thought and modern economics is what really is called for at this point in order to straighten out or right the imbalance between ethical considerations and matters of economic growth. Economic growth is certainly necessary. I'm generally not in favor of being terrifically poor in spite of my paycheck, On the other hand, it can't overwhelm the ethical considerations, which is that for the sake of which human beings are in the first place, the good, however we understand that. Economic growth has to be guided by certain kinds of ethical principles, and it's reflection on those principles with which philosophy is primarily concerned. So you could say economic growth in this respect is subordinate to ethical considerations.
I think corporations, as large public entities, multinational entities, have to ask the questions about what the agreed upon rules at this particular moment are and how best to either abide by them or run the risk of being judged by them.
Good ethics over the long term can produce a reliable economic growth.
Economic growth is essential for everybody to be happier in our economy, and therefore economic growth, in my opinion, is ethical thing to do for our society.
You know, all things being equal, more economic growth would be better than less, but economic growth is not the only value in a society.
Looking through the lens of these subjects, it's evident that ethics and economic growth can and have existed independently in the past, but today they are intertwined. In order to have reliable economic growth, we need ethical behavior to balance strong economic growth and work towards creating an ideal society. What do you think?